1 of 6 from 3 in the 16-point loss. Max,
yep.
How much did Westbrook hurt his MVP chances last night?
He certainly didn't help them, so yes, he hurt them, but how much did he hurt them? Not enough that he's out of the running for MVP. Let's not forget, when last James Harden clearly pulled ahead, and I acknowledged it, what was that, about a week or 10 days ago, it seems? When that
so
happened,
touched by that.
Russell Westbrook went on an insane triple-double tear and leading to a winning streak for his team, for OKC. And then suddenly, a week later, everyone turned around and said, oh, okay, MVP race not over. Russell Westbrook still very much in it. If he does that again, we will be saying that again, particularly because, Stephen A., the idea of finishing a season with a triple-double. It's like when Miguel Cabrera won the Triple Crown. Mike Trout should have been MVP, but of course it was given to Miguel Cabrera because there's something so sexy to sports writers about the idea of a Triple Crown. It's so rare. It had been so many decades since it was achieved that even though it's by traditional counting stats that aren't as important as, more advanced sabermetric stats, no one was trying to hear that. They gave it to the Triple Crown winner, particularly because he was on a winning team. And if Russell Westbrook ends the season with a triple-double on a playoff team without a ton around him, and he certainly doesn't have another real frontline scorer with him, then the fact is these sports writers, Stephen A., who grew up in an era where the greatest players had no shot to average a triple-double in the season. That was Oscar Robertson. That's because the pace was much faster. Magic Johnson never had a shot. Larry Bird never had a shot. Michael Jordan never had a shot. We were never going to see a player average a triple-double again. If Russell Westbrook does that for a playoff team, you could say whatever you want about Harden. Real good chance Russell Westbrook's name is on that trophy.
I think you should be drug tested, and I think any reporter who thinks like you should be drug tested. Here's the reality of the situation. You could talk about Russell Westbrook averaging a triple-double all you want to. He's 8 games worse than James Harden, and oh, by the way, James Harden is averaging 29, 11, and 8. It ain't like this dude is off the map. He's damn near averaging a triple-double himself. Over the last 5 games, he's had 4 triple-doubles. And oh, by the way, in those 5 games, 4 of them, 38, 41, 40, and 39. The only game that he had under 20, which was in a win over the Lakers where he recorded a triple-double. That happened to be a game they won by 39 points. It was over by halftime. So he didn't really need to do anything. So while Russell Westbrook is doing this, folks are acting like James Harden just faded from the picture and just went into the sunset and chilling out on vacation or something. No, he happens to be balling, damn near averaging a triple-double himself. The Houston Rockets are by 8 games better. They're a top 3 seed in the Western Conference. By the way, James Harden just hit a game winner last night, mind you. And last night when he didn't have a triple-double, 39, 11, and 7. I mean, it's just amazing to me. It's just amazing to me how people sit here and talk about James Harden like, oh, my Lord, Russell Westbrook is doing this, but James Harden is sitting there on vacation somewhere. Brother is
Who's acting
balling.
like that? Who's acting like that? Everyone's saying he's the MVP front runner right now.
James Harden is the front runner. Period.
29, 11,
Period.
and 8. 29, 11, and 8. To 31, 10, and 10. Not that the counting numbers are the best way to do it, but that's what we're dealing with because we're talking
I'm proud
triple-doubles.
to hear you say that.
Well,
I'm proud to hear you say that, Mr.
Well, you brought it up.
Wannabe.
You brought it up.
Very
Westbrook's
proud of
averaging,
you. But go ahead.
Westbrook's averaging an extra bucket and 2 more rebounds a game, and he's behind by a half an assist or something like that. The point is, where there's a statistical advantage in those kind of triple crown categories, it is to Westbrook, not by a lot, but it is to Westbrook. Where there is an advantage in terms of team record, it is to Harden by a bit. But let me ask you this, Stephen A. Smith. One, it's a 2-part question. I'll let you answer them each one at a time. One, whose team is better designed around him right now, Harden's or Westbrook?
Harden.
And so Harden's team is designed better around him. Therefore, it would show up in the win-loss record, correct?
Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Yep. And is Mike D'Antoni, let me be very clear. Harden was a beast before D'Antoni got there. He put up MVP caliber numbers. But is Mike D'Antoni good for your triple crown stat lines if you're the primary ball handler or not?
Sure, yes.
So Harden's numbers are not completely inflated. He's a great player, but somewhat inflated, and his team is properly designed around him. And yet Westbrook has better numbers, and the win-loss record is explained by the design of the team.
Well, for those who don't know basketball or who struggle a little bit, even though they do know basketball, allow me to educate you. Yes, it's true. Yeah, I'm talking to you, Max Kellerman, and those the Max Kellerman clones all over the place. Here's the deal, Max. When you talk about inflated or conflated numbers, how come you never bring up how that helps Westbrook? Because if you don't have but so much, and you get to operate with carte blanche, shooting when you want and doing everything you want, and oh, by the way, expected to do it because you have very little to rely upon. Does that not conflate your numbers? Does that not inflate your numbers?
Yeah,
the
it
fact that
inflates
you
them,
can
sure.
All right, so what I'm saying to you is that the same argument you can make about Harden or against Harden, I can make against Westbrook. They're the top two league MVP candidates as far as I'm concerned. They've been absolutely spectacular. I get that. But in the end, when I think about James Harden, I don't see Russell Westbrook doing anything that James Harden is doing. And the one thing James Harden is doing that Russell Westbrook is not doing enough of is actually winning. And oh, by the way, the Louis Williams acquisition was definitely something that buffered things for the Houston Rockets. But they were a number 3 seed before Louis Williams arrived. And James Harden had these numbers before Louis Williams arrived.
Look, we know
so I don't want to hear that.
Based on what just happened, the question is how much did he hurt his chances? In other words, implicitly or explicitly, we acknowledge that James Harden is right now a little ahead of Russell Westbrook for MVP. My point is, it ain't over yet. Not over yet. And in terms of them not winning enough in the design of the team, surround Russell Westbrook with shooters. Where everywhere he looks, someone can shoot and see what happens, because that's not the case right now.
Hello, Russell Westbrook had Kevin Durant for the first 8 years of his career. And we were saying then, we said then he was being held back. We said and he was a bit haphazard, and he wasn't the prototypical point guard, and you have people who use that as a license and an excuse to criticize him. Now Kevin Durant's gone. The show is his, and now you're saying, oh, give him somebody like that
because
and watch what happens?
With Durant healthy, his numbers will be suppressed. Of course, they will be kept down because Durant gets a lot of touches.
I got an interesting question for you.
But if you surround him with shooters, the way Harden is surrounded with shooters, not one person to take all the shots away, the touches away, but guys to hit shots, it's a different story. What's the question?
Well, I'm sorry, Russell Westbrook. Serge Ibaka can hit a 15 to 17 footer. James Harden was once on that team. Kevin Durant was on that team.
And who came off the bench?
Reggie Jackson was on that team, and we still heard criticism about Russell Westbrook. But I'll ask you this question.
Including about from me.
Zip it. I got a question. Okay, I got a question. Max Kellerman, if James Harden, instead of Russell Westbrook, if James Harden had Kevin Durant, and there was no Russell Westbrook, it was James Harden and Durant instead of Westbrook and Durant, who would be better?
Harden had Durant versus Westbrook had Durant. I think it's listen, they were on the same team. Westbrook started. Harden came off the bench. Why was that?
Because you could get in each other's way.
Have Durant.
I'm talking about based on what you see from the two players.
Who
Harden is, who Westbrook is, who would Durant be better with? Which team would be better?
Maybe James Harden.
Thank you. End of discussion.
No,
Case
but
closed.
This one, yes.